Well, problem solving is something that's needed to deal with this well. And problem solving becomes almost impossible when we are weighed down under the burden of negative emotions. So we need to be quite clear emotionally to actually have access to our best problem solving faculties in the brain. The part of the brain that's the most effective problem solver, it's good at planning and it's got cognitive faculties. It works things out. It's this part called the prefrontal cortex. It's in front of the brain. It's at the forehead, basically, of the brain. And so this is the same part that gets disconnected when we're stressed out. So a distressed animal, which is what we become under these extreme emotional conditions, it doesn't need to be an effective, clever problem solver. It just needs some very basic survival instincts. So when we're under a heavy amount of stress, that's exactly what happens to the brain. It tunes itself into some really basic level survival instincts. So when we're super stressed, we can no longer effectively or efficiently solve problems. We become quite basic and animal-like, and we enter the state that we all know as fight or flight. And in this state, we are not very resourceful. And debt can feel like a really big, shameful secret. And so many of us are struggling with debt. And it's sometimes in huge amounts of debt as well. It's a bit of an epidemic these days, but it still feels like a shameful secret. So we don't address these serious emotional consequences. We just end up feeling overwhelmed and exhausted and resentful. And we end up with anxiety and all sorts of really negative emotional baggage. But when you're in this place, really, this experience will stop you in your tracks. So let's just look at this problem, how it really stops you being resourceful and innovative. And in our time together tonight, I want to really show you how to lighten the load of your financial and your emotional burdens. Because through understanding and becoming more aware of what's keeping you limited from your personal power, you can then become aware of what limits your ability to be more masterful in your financial situation. So when you can clear that, then you become the master of your financial situation instead. And it's so really important, and this session is all about that. If you've got any amount of debt or emotions around debt, then this session is perfect for you, because we might not be able to magic your debt away, but we can change how you feel about debt. That's what this session has been specifically designed for, so that there can be a shift in your energy that can lead to miracles on the other side of this session, so that we can't magically manage your debt away. We can't just make it disappear, but we can definitely help to change the way you feel about your debt. And, like we said, if you're an alcoholic, you have to admit you've got a problem before you can start working on the problem. So when you're in debt, we need to be able to admit that the debt is real before we can start to deal with the problem. So how do we really go about shifting your energy around money? Well, when you allow yourself to tap into that feeling that you get around debt, or the feelings, then you'll notice that your body can even start to reflect how you feel. So your posture changes. So there's a feeling of heaviness, of closing in, of being squashed. And there's a great difficulty in standing proud and tall and being empowered and feeling strong. This is one of the worst feelings that we can have. In fact, there's more than one. The worst feelings that you can have blasting through your nervous system, the feelings of shame and embarrassment and guilt, because they are so destructive. So there's another part to this as well, because letting go of the stress of debt can feel like a bad choice too, because people somehow think that Stress is going to force them not to repeat the same mistake. I hear it so often with clients. Like, I work better under pressure. And it seems that so many people really believe that being under pressure and under this amount of stress is necessary in order to put enough pressure on themselves so that they can achieve what they want because of the pressure and push them into some kind of action. But we know through neuroscience, we know through lots of different performance testing on people, on individuals, on groups, that actually the opposite is true. So what I was saying earlier, we know that when you're under stress, you are not resourceful. The brain is switched into a far less resourceful state. So to release the stress and to begin to forgive yourself are absolutely necessary to make a positive change in your relationship to money and debt. And then there's another common theory that pops up all the time with clients that I see, that you think that you deserve to feel stressed because of the debt. Like, I caused the debt, it's all my fault. Or maybe there's a person around you who helped you to create the debt and it's all their fault. There's somebody or something to blame. And so you feel like you don't deserve to feel good about this, that you actually deserve to feel bad about this. But just observe what happens in this place when this wall of shame and embarrassment and guilt and resentment. Notice how you feel when that wall comes up. And you remember what we talked about last month about these blocks that happen, these things that stop us from being successful. Well, that's exactly what this is. This wall full of shame and guilt and embarrassment and fear and resentment. It's a block. It's a block in the road. And it just gets in the way. It can stop you in your tracks. So we then worry about how can we change this, or what are we going to do about this? And all that worry absorbs even more energy and makes us more exhausted. And now when we think about awareness of the best state to be in, to become your most resourceful, we know that, again, with the same evidence of neuroscience and behavioural sciences and performance science, that you absolutely need to let go of the guilt and the shame and the fear in order to become your best, your most resourceful, and achieve your best. So we're going to use a technique. Now, this technique involves a thing called tapping, where we tap on acupuncture points. We're not going to use needles. We're going to use this gentle percussion tapping on specific points on the face, on the body, and on the hands. So when you're tapping, you just want to use one hand to do the tapping, and you tap gently with 2 fingers and lightly. Tap on the points. They're going to be indicated on a diagram shown, and I'm going to talk you through them so that you're aware where each of the points are. And you're going to tap on each point 7, 8, 9, maybe 10 times, something like that. Don't worry too much about the specifics here. Just making contact with the point and tapping on the point as we voice the problem is where the power comes in the process. So I'm going to take you through the points shortly. And if any questions come up while we tap, just put them in the chat box so we'll be able to answer them either as we go through the process, or we can answer them later and have a discussion to make sure everybody's clear on what's needed to do this process. This is something you can use on your own. It's really simple, but it is so powerful as well. And it gives you access to the best part of yourself, the most resourceful part of yourself. So that in the future, when you're dealing with finances, you're going to be able to be at your best. You're going to be able to manage your finances really, really well. So tapping is like a bit of rewiring. You know, you've got the electricity cables in the house. So you've got a fuse box and there's wiring that goes around all of the plug sockets. And then you've got another switch in the fuse box and there's wiring for the lights upstairs. And another switch in the fuse box and there's the wiring for the cooker. And another switch. So you've got these switches in the fuse box and this wiring. Well, the body has a similar mechanism. So they're called meridians. And the meridians are like the wiring. And each of the meridians, there are 14 of the major ones in total. Each of these meridians is connected to a major organ of some kind. So the heart has a meridian, the liver has a meridian, the large intestine has a meridian, the lungs have a meridian, the bladder has a meridian, the kidneys have a meridian. So they've all got their own wiring. And as we tune into a problem, we disturb the energy in one or more of the major organs and the wiring. And the tapping is like rewiring. So we're saying, even though this problem exists, and when I acknowledge this problem and how it disrupts my body and the energy of the wiring in my body, and when I tap on a point, I can help to rebalance and recalibrate, almost rewire that particular circuitry for the heart or the lungs or whatever it is that's gone out of balance. Bring it back into balance so that in the future, when I walk into the same problem, I no longer respond in the same way. The wiring has been balanced out. And so I don't get thrown off balance immediately when the problem enters back into my awareness. So very simple and very powerful. So let's get the process started. So take a piece of paper and write down the amount of your debt. Now, you probably have spent quite a lot of time avoiding the thinking about the debt, the labelling of the debt, the number of the debt, or maybe you're like me and you move the debt around every year to avoid paying any interest on it. So you kind of know where it is and what it's doing, but you just keep pushing it around like pieces on a chessboard. Well, while you avoid this, avoid really dealing with it and the feelings around it, it's like a vacuum. It's like a vacuum cleaner, and it is sucking the energy out of you. It's exhausting you. And it makes you feel really horrible. So you avoid it more. Because why wouldn't you avoid it? Why do we don't want to go to bad feeling places. So we're not going to keep consciously walking into a place that feels bad. But if we can shift that feeling, if we can change the feeling so it no longer feels bad, if we can change it into a feeling of motivated excitement, of a place where we can see positive results and endpoints, then we want to go there. And when we get there, we feel good about it again. So this is what the tapping is going to help us do. So avoiding is sucking our energy, so let's not avoid it anymore. Let's start to shift and change how it feels. Now, there are lots of people who I work with who don't know what to write down here because they even avoid opening their bills. If you're one of those people, just write down your best guess. Write down the figure that you believe is a ballpark figure around your debt. So last time I did this exercise, my ballpark figure was at about £17,000, and it was credit card debt. And a little bit of it belonged to somebody else who I'd helped out. So I was feeling resentful about them because I'd helped them out and now I was carrying the burden of their debt. I was feeling resentful about myself because I'd built this debt and created it and it was all my fault. And now I feel quite enthusiastic about it. I'm paying it off. I'm actually starting to build up funds where I no longer feel that debt is an issue for me. I can see the light very clearly at the end of the tunnel, and I'm starting to feel more free and in flow around money. And now I'm really easily able to forgive myself, because forgiveness is the last little part of this that I want to talk about before we get into the process. So do you feel that you haven't forgiven yourself for creating this debt? Or maybe the debt was caused by somebody else and you've helped them out and you don't feel like they deserve your forgiveness. Or if it's yourself, you don't deserve your forgiveness. Because why would you want to forgive yourself when you're the cause of the problem? Or why would you want to forgive this other person when they are the cause of the problem? It's like letting somebody off the hook. But that's not so. There's a good reason to hold on to these negative feelings, but it doesn't help you. So let's shift this stuff. So look at the figure on the page. Look at what you've written down. The amount of your debt. Your best guess at the amount of debt that you have today. And I want you to say it out loud. I have this debt of... The last time I said this, it was £17,000. Say it out loud. I have this debt of... Fill in the blank with your amount. And notice how that feels. Notice how the feelings come up in your body. This wall, the shame, any embarrassment, any fear, any resentment, any anxiety, any stress. Notice the feelings that come up when you state, I have this debt of... And if you were to sit there looking at this debt and really focusing on the feelings, could you say how high you would be able to score these feelings? So 10 is the worst it's ever felt, and 0 is, okay, I feel really good about this. So what's your score? So score fear if you have it, shame. Write down any of the names of the guilt or the fear or the shame or the anxiety. Any of the feelings that you have, a feeling of failure maybe. Score each one out of 10. 10 being the worst and 0 being, I feel absolutely fine about this. So you might have one overall score for how bad this feels, and then individual scores, one on fear, one on shame, one on embarrassment, one on anxiety, one on feeling like a failure. So now that you've assessed each of the feelings that you've accessed, you've scored it out of 10. The next step is, I want you to finish this sentence. This debt means that I'm... Fill in the blank. This debt means I'm... What does it mean to you? So this can actually bring up some of really dark stuff. This can bring things up like, I'm an idiot, I'm a failure, nothing I do ever works, I can never get ahead, the world just isn't fair, I've never been able to do this, people always betray me. It can bring up some really dark stuff. So finish this sentence. This debt means I'm... Now, every time you think about your debt, you must realise that this is all going on inside you. You get these blasts of negative emotions, and the energy of this phrase that I am because of my debt, the energy from this is blasting your nervous system every time you go near the idea of your debt. So let's just shift perspective for a moment. So with this perspective shift, I want you to start to realise that in order for you to be in this much debt, somebody has lent you this much money. So somebody lent me £17,000. It was a bit more at one point. So now I've got a choice here, because I can start to think about, well, if I'm credit worthy and somebody is prepared to lend me £17,000, you know, like I was talking about before, this woman who lost her mother at the age of 2. There's 2 ways at least that this could turn out. There are many ways. So you can choose how this all turns out for you. Are you going to be the victim? Are you going to be in the unresourceful state and allow life to beat you down? Or are you going to choose to be the successful woman who takes advantage of life? Are you going to choose to see the story from the perspective of life has given me this gift of having to learn how to look after myself so that I can really take advantage of life to the full, and see the story from the perspective of it empowered me that I was given such an early trauma? It gave me the resourcefulness to have this life that I have now. And this is a choice that we can all make. Now that you can see there are these at least two alternative perspectives on life, is your debt such a bad thing? Or is the fact that you were so creditworthy a good thing? Now you can choose how to respond. So let's begin the tapping from this place where we have a choice. Suddenly we've realised, it's come into our awareness that we have a choice about how we feel about all of this, about how we shift our perspective into this other place. We can do this through the tapping. So begin tapping. I'm going to begin on the eyebrow point, the beginning of the eyebrow. And you say, there's my debt. Look at that debt. Tap on the outside of the eye. It doesn't feel good. Tapping under the eye. And I can really feel it. Tapping under the nose. I can feel shame. Tapping under the mouth. I feel like a failure. Tap on the collarbone points. Now choose the emotions that you've written down. Don't just copy me. Write down your truth. Tapping on the collarbone points. Look at your list and start to speak your truth. Let's get really heavy about this truth here and acknowledge exactly what's come up for you right now. While we tap, we rewire and rebalance the energy body. I've really failed. Read something out off your paper. Tapping under the arm. It's written down here in black and white. I've failed. Tapping on the little finger. As the palm faces you, it's on the nail, the side of the nail on top of the little finger. All these dark feelings. Tapping on the middle finger next to the nail on the top of the finger, the palm facing you. These feelings are so dark and so heavy. All this shame. Tapping on the index finger again next to the nail. This shame feels so heavy. This guilt is weighing me down. Tapping on the side of the thumb. And there's my debt. That's £17,000 written down there. I don't even want to look at it. Tapping on the karate chop point. It's so painful to acknowledge this debt. It's so shameful to speak out loud about this debt. Keep tapping on the karate chop point. And yet, even though I feel the pain and the shame of this debt, and I don't want to think about it, I'm learning how to love and accept myself and my feelings, to create a shift, to be a better me. Tap on the top of the head. This debt, beginning of the eyebrow, I really don't want to think about it. Outside of the eye, this debt. Under the eye, it reminds me of something painful. Under the nose, this debt means I'm a failure. Use your own words. Under the mouth, this debt, it means that I'm not enough, I'm not worthy. On the collarbone point, this debt means that anything I do, it's just not good enough. Remember, use your own language here. Tapping under the arm. And it's always the same story. Tapping on the little finger. All these heavy feelings. Tapping on the middle finger. All this fear and sadness. Tapping on the index finger. And it just feels like it's all my fault. Tapping on the thumb. Well, it is my fault, isn't it? It's my debt. And on the karate chop point, all this debt, it's all my fault and I honour my feelings. Tap on the top of your head. I'm just going to honour my feelings. Beginning of the eyebrow. I know it feels really heavy. Maybe it feels dark too. Tap on the outside of the eye. But I'm choosing to honour my feelings. Tap under the eye. And then to bring light into those same feelings. Tap under the nose. All this old shame. Tap under the mouth. I'm choosing to breathe light into it. Tap on the collarbone point. All this shame about this debt. I can't forget it. But I'm choosing to breathe life into it. Tapping under the arm. I can't forgive myself for this debt. But I'm choosing to begin to breathe light into it. Tapping on the little finger, this shameful debt. Tapping on the middle finger and breathing life into that shame, into that debt. On the index finger, it's time for a change. Tap on the thumb. I've been punished enough. And tap on the karate chop point. Take a slow breath. And release it slowly. And just keep tapping. Now you might want to go through this sequence again. You might want to do it multiple times. And as you repeat it, begin to bring more and more of your own language in, shifting the words so that you're using words that really resonate with you. Keep tapping on the karate chop point, using words that really resonate with you. And as you go in through the rounds, you can find that you are getting more and more deeply connected to your own stuff, your baggage, your guilt and your shame. And make sure that you address all of these points honestly so that you become really clear and honest about the rawness of your experience. Just keep tapping for another minute or two on this karate chop point. Being really clear and honest, and allow the rawness of your experience to come through in your own language as you tap. And I want you to finally just realise that focusing on the negative is healing of the negative. It's healing the nervous system while you're tuned into a negative experience. So recognising, becoming aware of this negative state is where we begin the shift, because through becoming aware of the negative state and being really honest and voicing this state is really going to help to shift it properly. Shift it through the honesty, shift it through the power of this tapping by releasing heaviness of the emotions that come up, by releasing the power of these trapped negative emotions and this trapped negative energy, which will leave you feeling a little freer. So if you're ready, you could start going back through the points again, and I'm going to allow you to repeat this part of the recording again so that you can make sure that you've really got to the bottom of the negative aspects, and then we can start to build a positive picture, a positive framework around where we go next.